Welcome back to our listeners and viewers of the Responsible Edge podcast, brought to you by the Anti-Greenwash Charter, and for this particular episode, Question Zero. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be on site and joined by Russ and Gemma Waitman, scientist and marketeer, husband and wife, and co-founders of Two Drifters, the world's first carbon-negative rum distillery. In this episode today, we'll be reflecting on ideas from the article, The Power of Climate Storytelling, a white paper published by New Zero World and its partners. Guys, thank you so much for having us come and join you today. I have to admit, obviously we can't capture this on camera or audio, but the smell in this place is absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for having us in and recording on site.
Oh, thank you for coming to see us.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have visitors, and do this sort of thing in person is extra special.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, Russ, I have to admit, we've just had a tour. You've taken us around, and I feel slightly inebriated at the end of it. I'll be honest. No drinks have passed anyone's lips, I should say, but the smell is just amazing in here. We're going to talk through the story of Two Drifters, but I think that the story of Two Drifters really starts with your story, and as a duo, as a dynamic duo that you are. So, Gemma, I think we're going to kick off with you. Take us back to the beginning. Where did this all begin? Where did this all start? Like, how did a scientist and a marketeer end up building a distillery?
And it was around rum. Rum was our first date. So Russ and I met, 15, 16 years ago.
Maybe a bit more, yeah.
Yes. Through friends. And Russ took me rum tasting in Bristol on our first date.
Very deep.
Because before that, every payday Russ got, he was spending his money on rent and a different bottle of rum every month. So his rum selection was insane. He was a complete rum geek. My eyes had only been open to Malibu and Bacardi by that point. And I was like, what is all the fuss about? And then that evening, I was just like, oh my goodness, people don't talk enough about rum. It's made from sugar. So it's such an amazing base for a spirit that you can just make such fantastic, versatile concoctions with. I was like, oh, the rum world's amazing. So we kind of enjoyed rum at that point, but never thought we'd own a rum distillery. We then got married, went to St. Lucia on our honeymoon. And
that was cheaper than water then.
Rum was cheaper than water, yeah.
Russ, was it you choosing the honeymoon lesson?
As you know, that was a joint decision, wasn't it? Yeah, no, it was.
By this point, Gemma, you're fully...
She's in, yeah.
Fantastic.
I am, yes. And I thought I was more gin, and I was like, I just did that because everyone else was drinking gin, but I loved rum and the versatility of it and how it's just made from such high quality ingredients and you can have fantastic cocktails with it. So I really bought into rum.
It's always fun, right? The rum drinks are always fun, cocktails are fun.
Yes, exactly.
It's always fun.
So then I was still sales and marketing, you were still academia, and then Russ got a job in Vancouver. So we moved to Canada with a 2-month-old baby, and we were there for 2.5, 3 years.
Yep.
And then we left Canada and we moved to Wales for another academic job. And then that one was coming to an end. And the thought of moving on to another academic job somewhere in the world with a young child, and it just wasn't very exciting, was it, for us? We'd done it.
No, we wanted to be back in Devon. We wanted to be back here where we both grew up. We wanted a daughter to grow up in the same kind of environment we'd had. And there's no chemistry jobs here because chemistry is what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And so we had to create it.
Yeah.
So the distillery is part of that creation.
And everyone goes, why rum? And it was never going to be anything else.
No.
We didn't choose rum because rum's the new gin, or rum's the next thing, or rum deserves its time in the limelight. It's only ever going to be rum.
Yeah. And was that because it was just such a core part of your story, your identity?
Yes.
It was everything to you guys from the beginning.
I don't think we'd had an evening that didn't involve rum. Looking back on it, it wasn't like if we celebrated, we'd have a rum cocktail. We wouldn't if we went drinking, we'd stick to the rum cocktails.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I still think it's a great drink, a great spirit, because it has cocktails for both summer and winter. So it's not like you have a seasonal thing. So I do think its versatility is its strength, but also from an education point, its weakness. So
Yes.
Well, it's great that we've got two founders that are as authentic as you could possibly get. If rum has been part of every evening since you guys met.
Yeah.
Let's the other, I mean, it's an amazing story all told, but one of the other incredible parts of what you're doing here is the carbon negative nature of your rum.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely intrigued and fascinated by this. And Russ, you've done a brilliant job of talking us through some of the waste management systems that you guys have got in place through there within the distillery. But just talk us through, before we talk about how you've done it, like why that was important to you and sort of, you know, where the inspiration came from to go down that route.
I'll do the why.
Okay, I'll do the how.
Yeah, you do the how.
That sounds right. Cool.
The why is because it won't be my business that hurts the planet. Why on earth would I decide to set up my rum distillery in Exeter, a place that I love, and have my daughter raise here and talk about the future and then create a business that's just contributing to global warming like everyone else? So if we're going to do this and we're going to do it really amazingly and as hard as we possibly can, we're going to make the best rum in the world, but I won't do it at the expense of contributing to global warming. So before we even decided where, when, how, it was like, whatever we do, we can't have our business hurt the planet, because why on earth should it?
And Gemma, how does that relate to your previous working experience? Were you always interested in sustainability? Was it always a common key theme with the work you were doing in the marketing world?
My passion, so I was medical sales before this, but my passion is brand story and brand provenance and just genuine credibility when it comes to telling your story. And I think brands like ours that are startup, founder-led, we're never going to walk into the industry having left Diageo or have huge amounts of money behind us. The only thing we have is credibility and our story about how we grew and why we're doing it. And that will hopefully be enough to snowball us into a position where we are on a bigger stage and we do have a louder voice. But to start with, if our grounding isn't 100% focused on our goals and where we want to be and that we're both on it together, then it just gets a bit flaky and it doesn't really mean much. So as our rum gets bigger and better and noisier, our foundations will always be, it will not hurt the planet with everything we're doing.
It's that notion of one of the most significantly valuable things that you guys have is your credibility and your authenticity, and that's something to hold on to through it all. Comes through. I like that. That's how we battle the big boys. That's something that we can utilize in order to create a distinct position. Exactly. Russ, talk me through. Gemma, that was brilliant. Give me a bit of why, but in terms of the how, getting into the sciencey side, like how, once you've made that intention to go, we're not going to create a business that has a negative impact on the environment and we're going to go down the carbon negative route, what are the major considerations when setting up the distillery to achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was as straightforward to see it in this kind of journey of, well, we went from this, so we thought, right, this is exactly the problem, then we go to fix it, because that would have been nice. But really it's about bits along the way that kind of give you the indication that it's possible at all, and then you kind of come up with an idea. It's not like a light bulb, but it comes from the academic research I used to do. So as a chemist working in different laboratories at different universities, looking at always with an environmental spin. So the first kind of chemistry stuff I looked at was basically, can we make the reactions greener that people make all kinds of chemicals from? Right the way through to the final bits of research that I was doing, which was in carbon capture, carbon storage, and trying to turn CO2 into something that has value. So can you add value to CO2? CO2 is particularly left as a waste product in the sky because it's colorless, odorless, and not valuable. So you need to change those things if you want to change it from a chemistry perspective. That meant that I went to lots of kind of fascinating, for me maybe, fascinating conferences where you'd meet people talking about CO2 and things you could do with it and the ways you could add value, and also ways to capture it and ways to store it. And one of those conferences was in Cologne in Germany, and a company there, I heard them speak and I was just blown away by the technology they had. It was already a few years into it, but they hadn't started selling and they hadn't got customers and stuff. So Climeworks was the company. They're who we partner with now, and that's the beginning part of the inspiration, right? So there's a way to capture CO2 and mineralize it, turn it into stone, and store it. That's what their technology does, right? Direct air capture, it's just a box. It sucks air in with CO2 in it, filters out all the CO2, concentrates it. It's then mineralized and stored underground, right? Mind-blowing. So that's where the story really starts. And then you're like, well, maybe this could weave into the business side of things and fit with our why. And that's where it then becomes a very simple exercise, right? You've got a solution and a problem, and it's just putting them together. So how do you achieve that? You need to measure, first of all. And actually, that's the biggest thing for everyone. Every business needs to measure its impact in order to understand where it can be better. From our perspective, though, it was then about, well, how much do you measure? That's always the question. How much of your journey should you take on, and how much impact do you ripple out? Because you can go forever down a rabbit hole, that's for sure. But for us, we wanted it to be authentic and transparent and as rigorous as possible. So we went for a life cycle assessment, so understanding the full impact, and we went from cradle to grave. So then that's the most kind of intense study you could do of a product. So then you think, okay, how do we produce this bottle of rum? That's one part, right? So there's the production, there's all of the stuff from the cradle to the get to the production, and there's all of the stuff so on. So I'm happy to go into as much detail as you like here. But it really just to kind of summarize the process, you've got to think cradle, where your stuff grows. So for us, sugar cane is the raw ingredient, right the way through to its journey to the distillery. And actually, even just the sugar on its own is perhaps a third of the impact of the whole thing. And then you've got to do something with that sugar at the distillery to turn it into your products, the rum. But we've got influence there. So that's interesting. Then you've got to say, okay, we're going to send it to our customers. So essentially the use phase, first of all, you've got to transport it to them. So how are your couriers, how are your pallets getting everywhere? Then you've got your customers using it. They've got warehouses with electricity and gas and water and all sorts of emissions. And then there's a bar with an ice cube, and you've got things like that. You've got bits factored in for that too. And that's using the product. Is drinking it with an ice cube causes impact. So there's a bit for us to think about, right the way through to the kind of grave element, which, most of it will be the recycling of the glass bottle. Hopefully all the rum's been consumed, so that's not an issue. You've got a cork to recycle, you've got all of those bits. And so that gives you a large spreadsheet, of course, but mainly it gives you a number, an amount of CO2 that you've caused, or equivalents of CO2, right the way through that journey.
And the key is that you've not hidden or shied away from any potential area.
It would be so easy for us to go, well, it's not our responsibility until it arrives here.
Yeah, we only do the bit that we manufacture, right?
Because we're not buying in extra molasses. The molasses is already here because it's here for animal feed. But so we could go, we could start our journey once molasses at the door, and that's someone else's responsibility. But that's never going to help the planet. So we take the whole journey.
And we thought about having it here in Exeter, so we are responsible, and that links back to the kind of why. So we have to own that chain, the entire life cycle.
That's brilliant. It's truly, and you hear this a lot, I imagine, but truly brilliant to hear two founders that are that committed and that knowledgeable and understandable about the responsibility that they have to get this stuff right. Difficult question perhaps to answer, but I think it's really important to talk about as well in the context of all the brilliant stuff that you guys do. No business, as we know, is 100% sustainable. What are the areas within Two Drifters Distillery that you guys are looking to get better? What are the areas of focus for you that you develop?
Yeah, so there's loads of bits that need focus. I mentioned the sugar was the kind of a third of the impact of the whole thing. That supply chain is opaque, impossible for us as a company that buys 5 tons of molasses from a ship that's shipping 50,000 tons. No one wants to answer any questions we have, right? So there's an enormous amount of work to have a fully traceable route. Very hard in sugar. Basically, in the refining process for the sugar is in North Africa, and it's where this side of the world's sugar goes to be processed, right? So getting traceability back to where it's come from and having a proper supply chain route that says this is where these emissions are is impossible. We make the assumption on the worst possible part of the journey, but there, if you had an access right the way back to your producer, you have immediately a way to have some control, because I bet there's technologies that can help that sugar plantation be even more efficient. And sugar plantations actually are quite efficient. They use leftover fibers to reduce their emissions in terms of they don't burn gas, for example, to do any of their processing. So there are ways that you could influence that if you had a bigger voice, right? But because of our scale, impossible.
Yeah.
But what's great to hear is that you're observant and you're understanding and aware of those areas, and you've got plans as you develop and grow in order to address them. Which is fantastic. And again, we're going to come on to talk about storytelling. You're sharing that story with your following and making them aware of what's going on as you develop the business. I want to ask you, we've gone quite technical, which is brilliant. It's brilliant to understand exactly how you guys think about these things and the thoroughness with which you think about these things. I want to ask a couple more kind of more personal questions, I suppose, about, I've never interviewed a husband and wife bounding duo before, and I bet you get these questions all the time, but I'd love to learn a bit more about what that experience is like. And my first question for you is, thinking back to that tasting evening in Bristol, did you both have ultimately ambitions to run your own businesses at some point, or was that something that really came along with, as you described, the kind of the need, if you like, of creating the work that you wanted to do with your daughter living here? Or just talk us through the ambition behind becoming entrepreneurs, if you like.
That's a great question, because it's it unpacks a lot. I think
No, I never thought I would own a business with you.
no,
I never
you didn't
thought
know.
I would spend every minute of the day with you, Chris.
And it is a challenge, right? It is a challenge.
And all of our friends and family don't know how we do it.
No, and lots of couples are like, couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
And I
couldn't do it.
probably would have been one of them in the beginning, gone, oh gosh, no.
I think the way that works and the way that it has to work is that you both have to be committed to the final mission, right? And then you've really got to be on the same page. And we often say to each other that it would be impossible to have done this, right? Because it's not like it's just a straight up high the whole way of growth or anything. It's a roller coaster, particularly the last 6 years for everyone. So
If this had been your dream.
it just would have been a real struggle to come home and go, right, I've got absolutely no money. It's like, well, maybe go and get a real job, But if you're both on that journey together and you're both fully committed to what the outcome needs to be, and then you can kind of lean on each other's skill sets to do the parts that we are good at, then I think it isn't such a big deal. Is it?
No.
Is that right? I'm taking words.
And presumably, sorry, I've just asked Chris on this, like, presumably the experience of winning together, that must be an amazing thing to share with your partner as well.
Amazing.
Those are
Then
really good
the
bits.
losses are a bit easier because you can help each other along.
Someone always takes it a bit worse, don't they? So you could always pick the other one up.
But the wins are just huge, because I think some people might go, oh, you got a British Airways listing. And people go, oh, well, that's really impressive. Well done. And they might think, oh, British Airways will always take a few brands every now and then. But it doesn't work like that. The drinks industry is so hard to crack, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So when you do get a big win, I think we both appreciate the work that's gone into it. And it's just, you just get a menu listing is insane. So, I think the highs are higher and the lows are maybe less low than it could have been.
We don't know, right? The only thing I say just before you ask the question, British Airways does feature on the use phase of the calculation. So you got little miniatures flying around the place, so it matters. But just preempting that.
No, I like that. And I should say, we'll obviously be linking to all various different LinkedIn profiles for guys to go and sort of check you guys out, and honestly to the Two Drifters website as well to find out more about all the work that you guys do. Just final question on you guys, and when you think about like the future of the business and you think about what you're ultimately trying to achieve, I mean, perhaps more than a regurgitated vision statement, but give us an idea of like what the world looks like in 5, 10, 15 years if Two Drifters has achieved what you are aiming to achieve with it.
And I think maybe that is a bit different.
Between us?
Yeah.
Possibly a little bit, yeah. But
My dream, not dream, because that means it might not happen. My goal for the Two Drifters and where we're heading, I would like, is when we get too big for this place, which is a while away, I want that destination distillery where the credibility and what we talk about and the transparency that we go above and beyond is on display for everyone to see. So you can come and see the carbon emissions being captured. You can come and see why we use this glass and what this happens. And you can come and play on a bike and generate emissions for it and generate power for us. And then you can get a free drink at the bar. And I want everything to be like so transparent and interesting. I think the only way we're going to get sustainability, like to be people to bother about it, is to make it interesting. I think people quite often want to talk to us because of our journey and how we are credibly sustainable, but we try and make it interesting as well. And I want that on display for the world to see, which is all storytelling. So I doubt that's what you have.
It's 100% not what I...
No, exactly.
On that, so is your view that actually with more, not just education, but inspiration and aspiration, that we can actually get more young minds engaged, interested in doing things differently, in seeing the world differently, and ultimately they can then be the innovators that create the next sort of set of businesses, if you like, that utilize the
Exactly.
you built.
And I think we're so already seeing people go, oh, greenwashing. Greenwashing is already a word that people just get to use flippantly to not believe sustainable claims. And my worry is that we've missed the whole hype of sustainability in the fun bit, and we've gone straight to the, well, there's no point believing anyone because it's all greenwashing. Whereas if you can actually show someone fun, because rum and cocktails and socializing is still fun. So you can show the future generations that, look, sustainability can be fun and it's credible and it's real. And look what these decisions have changed and we've impacted. Yeah, I want to show that.
Could I just pick up on that? And Russ, I want to come back to your
All good.
statement as well. But like, I think it's always good to hear, like, when you think about the way that you've developed business to this point, what have been the really difficult decisions that you've made, where you've made the sustainable choice as opposed to the immediately commercially more, I guess, in the short term, more profitable choice?
Yeah.
What? Give us some examples of those decisions.
I had one last week.
Brilliant.
We would be really good on a London Underground poster. So you're waiting for your tube and you know these big posters, and they got in contact with us, said you have a great campaign. I agreed. I said, can you just tell me what happens to the paper afterwards or before? How is it processed? What do you do with it? Is it recyclable? Where does it go? Is it covered in plastic? How does it work? And I go, I can't advertise two drifters' sustainability claims on a process that has really high carbon emissions. It just doesn't work. I never heard back. It's not going to work. Like, it's just not a sustainable process. So marketing, big billboards, big bus stops, it's just all covered in plastic because that's how it works. That's how it's waterproof. And it's just,
But Gemma, that is so, again, it comes back to Russ when you were taking us through the analysis that you have of your emissions and your responsibility to them. That is so brilliant to hear that you guys are thinking, because it'd be so easy. Just you go, it's a brilliant opportunity. I probably don't need to ask the question, and therefore ignorance is bliss in many ways. That's awesome to hear. Russ, let's come back to you. Vision, if it's totally different, or if it's not totally different, what does the vision look like?
No, it's nicely linked because it's much more from a data kind of an analysis side, I guess. The vision side of it for me is, can we use this as a business case study, essentially, to drive change throughout the whole system? So can you use Two Drift as an example of a drinks business that becomes profitable and steals customers away from the big guys through having this inbuilt carbon tax that essentially forces us to make decisions that are more sustainable, like Gemma's just described there with the billboards, and avoid the impact first, because that's the way it's structured, right? The carbon removal side of it's really, really nice and everything, but my goodness, it's expensive and probably always will be slightly more expensive than the avoidance. And so therefore you must reduce your impact first and then remove what you can't, which is the right way to approach it anyway. But how do you structure that within the business? And if you can do that and produce a profitable business with a competitive product, then bam, you've got everyone's attention, and you will quickly generate change.
And I was going to say, Russ's way of doing it, you're not only changing the drinks industry, but also if those drinks industry people aren't advertising on these billboards because it's affecting their carbon tax, then the people that make billboards will change.
Yeah. Can you influence that?
That was going to be my kind of final you guys question, actually, was like, and you sound, so brilliant, as I say, to allude to before, to hear the kind of the passion and enthusiasm you've got for doing the hard things, doing the things that are challenging and making ultimately your life more challenging now, but ultimately with this greater vision of what you're trying to achieve while you're doing it. How optimistic or hopeful are you both about the future of commerce and the future of business in light of what you've just described? Do you think that with enough of these examples that we can realize this change, or okay, being open and honest, are we up against it?
Maybe we'd answer this one differently too.
I love how we've turned this.
Yeah. You're more optimistic than I am.
So I'd say I'm optimistic because it's just a technology game. So in reality, and maybe this is the science background, but in reality, all you need is enough money invested to reduce the price of this carbon removal. It will scale, and everyone will eventually have to deal with the stuff they can't avoid, but they will have avoided on the way to get there. So I still think that's quite a realistic, but probably optimistic outcome for the world. Yes, whether it's in time for some catastrophic damage, don't know.
The beauty of what you're doing is that ultimately, as you say, providing that case example, one of many in different sectors, that will ultimately build that swell of clarity, if you like, around the way that the business world looks to develop itself.
Yeah, this is how you assess your supply chain. This is how you look at your customers. This is how you do the process to avoid right the way through, and then you're left with the stuff you can't avoid. So you pay some premium, and yeah, that should be straightforward for everyone. In my eyes.
Russ, I think you guys are episode 149 of The Responsible Edge, and you've just brilliantly encapsulated the final solution, but
I mean, that is the solution, Maria. It has to be like that.
Yeah.
It's how you engineer that into a profitable business, and then it works with the way the world works. So yeah, that's key.
I feel totally optimistic.
Yeah. No, I am optimistic. Mine is just speed and time. I think having goals and kind of plans and targets just means businesses and people don't have to do stuff now. And that's my issue, is that, what we do is insane and over the top and goes beyond, but it's not. We should be the norm, or at least kind of leading the norm. And I'm like, and we get asked a lot, who do you respect? If you weren't two drifters, who would you work with? And I'm like, I just want everyone to do more. And then you get down the route of, but you've got to be positive. And this goes into the climate storytelling. It's like, well, at least people are doing something. And I think that at least they're doing something has to stop. And we have to be, no, we should all be doing more. And that's why I get a little bit negative. Because when you see things like, we don't use plastic in this tiny little part of our tiny little production in this global thing. I'm like, well, that's not enough. What we need more. And that's what I'm like.
And do you think, and we'll give it, Joe, you're one of the perfect podcast guests. The responses segue us lovely into the next stage. So just before we talk about this week's article on White Paper, do you think that storytelling sort of utilized in the right way can help address what you've just described? Or do you think it's the problem we've got is that at the moment it's affording that degree of sort of minimal action? Is that the way you view it currently?
Yes. And there's lots to talk about the article as well. I just think, and I think I gave you the example today when everything I read in that article is a bit like medicine, as in you have to make medicine taste sweet for people to take it. Whereas medicine, the fact that it's going to cure you should just be enough. And it's not. And same with climate change. We can't just say we're literally ruining the world for the next generation. It's like, that's not enough. I have to make it covered in sugar.
Palatable, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a bit like, well, that's going to take a lot longer. We don't have that much time.
It's wild, that, isn't it? You're so right. It's like, why do we have to sell this stuff?
Yeah.
That's why, surely
I don't know.
we've got to that point.
Yeah.
Just shows the power of the status quo, I suppose. Right, that was absolutely brilliant. I think it was fantastic. Thank you so much for being so open and showing, your progress. And as I say, we'll be linking to websites, etc., so people can go and check out the full story, should they wish. Let's move on now. I think, Russ, you're going to provide a bit of a summary, a bit of an introduction to this article, this white paper. It was a various different partners, but I think it was on the Climate Communications Research Hub site.
Yeah.
I don't know when it was published. Did you guys?
No, I didn't pick up on that.
I didn't do that.
Well, I didn't pick up on it either. So if anyone's checked, we'll obviously link to the source. So if anybody can pick up on that, they might be able to add it to the comments. But just provides a bit of an overview of what the piece covered, and then perhaps just pick out for you what you found the most interesting points made.
Yeah, I mean, the piece itself is a white paper with 4 authors, and they're talking about their different perspectives on how storytelling links to changing people's mindset to climate change and thinking about how we perceive it based on storytelling. And I think really what it focuses in on is that there's 4 different approaches to how storytelling, how do you storytell, and why it's so intrinsic in human nature and why it is so powerful. So it starts off by thinking about what it actually does to you. So humans respond, we physically respond to a good story, and storytelling, it's emotional. It brings out the love hormone, right? You respond quite forcefully to it.
That's why charities do so well.
Right, and I think it's that emotion, pulling on the heartstrings, exactly. All of those things, they work because they resonate. And I guess it's just what it really highlighted to me, reading through the different approaches, because some are kind of more granular and a bit more fluffy. And so there's kind of, it brought to me the power of having a storyteller to just cold hard facts and data. Yeah. Which is a conflict because I still
like
so with data.
Yeah.
But we're like that.
But that was gonna be the numbers, work data, interested in sort of experiential outcomes. Like, how does, working on Two Drifters and seeing the power of the story, like has that changed your perception of the role, or did you always know that story was going to be core and fundamental to the business?
It's interesting because I think back to academic days where you're writing papers, and that's a story. No matter how you look at it, you have to sell, and you still have to sell that. You have to raise grants, and you have to bring in money to keep the research going, and you do that through telling stories, but in a very scientific way. I think where like the worst papers you read are the ones where they just list, this is what happened and this is it. Where you can bring color, where you can bring kind of like reality to it, even in a scientific context, still really powerful.
But you're quite skeptical of stories.
Oh, I don't listen to the marketing.
No, you see straight through it, and you're
I'm not interested in it, but that's why you're trained to do that as a scientist. You're trained to look at this story and say, right, so I was leading onto it. Yeah. You're trained to read this story and like pick out the facts from it and say, is that realistic? Is that correct what they're doing? That is what a scientific approach is to anything. And so it's the same thing when you're faced with an onslaught of marketing bump and nonsense, right? Where they're talking about all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
Where's the meat? Where's like the detail?
Well, let me so you brilliantly, and by the way, that was a brilliant summary of the art of the white paper, and we'll obviously again be linking to that so the viewers and listeners can check out the source. But you mentioned there about the physical biological reaction that you get to a good story, but then you've also described really clearly how as a scientist you're not interested in the gumph and you want to go for the detail, if you like.
That's right.
How do we reconcile that? There are, because I think it's what's fascinating is that I think we need more of that like sort of scrutinizable eye that we go and we look at strategy and we go, right, what's actually compelling it? But we also need people to be emotionally affected. So how do we get that as a storyteller in business? How do we get that right?
In a very succinct amount of time as well.
With a fraction of attention.
Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah. I really don't know that answer, and we often agonize over exactly that problem because you have to face that as a business. We're quite an analytical business set up that way. Yeah. How do you bring some romance to the rest of it? I think, just thinking about what you were saying then, what really sticks in my mind is that if I'm reading, I'll go back to a paper. If you're reading a paper, you basically read it twice, right? You read it. That's how I was trained to do it. That's how my professor, when I was doing my PhD, that's what he said. He said, you read it once and you go for the emotion and you read the story, nice story. And then you go back over and you read the analysis to try and pick out the bits of data, and you strip out that emotional part. Because I don't think you can read something without, cold-hearted reading. People may be very good at that. I have no idea. I can't do it, but yeah, the twice run through and check. And then it's the same when you're kind of like having to mark something or like help someone edit things down. I can't do grammar at the same time as spelling and story, right? Those are all different things, and you've got to read it in different mindset.
Russ won't read fiction.
No.
He
No,
only reads non-fiction.
because it ruins your kind of like
Yeah.
ability to do that.
He'll only wants to like just read the most mundane, boring papers. If you're not learning something from it,
Yes, there you go.
then time is wasted. And that's where we argue, because I think you learn a lot from fiction and I read loads. And I think
But that's just a window
and
into
that's
how
why it makes me way more interesting a dinner party
Correct.
guest than you.
that is fair.
What's fascinating about it is between, you know, a couple duo that are running this business and shaping its narrative and its storytelling, we've got completely different kind of preferences. How do we, within the kind of climate storytelling space, how do we get that right when it comes to nuance of individual preferences around how we communicate it to you?
And that's what I thought the white paper didn't answer, but questioned, was that businesses like ours have to walk the kind of plank between one side trying to be a local startup founder-led business and getting your local area to be involved in what you're doing, and like we do beach cleans and understanding kind of our little corner of this massive world, what we're doing. But then that has a tendency to make the whole global problem quite small if we're just talking about this little area over here. But then if you go the other way and go, oh my gosh, the drinks industry is so massive for the rum world, and this is what massive rum companies are doing, or even bigger than that, spirits, even bigger than that, massive conglomerate corporations. And then the individuals can be like, wow, I haven't got a hope. What's the point in me trying to do my little bit when it doesn't really affect the dial? And I'm like, that's where I struggle, because I want people to, everyone should be doing more, but you kind of need to make that if we all did a bit more, we'd all have a big impact. But that's where the storytelling, I think, is a struggle between, do you make it very individual or do you make it more global? And I don't know which one affects people's behavior.
That's so. Do you guys have sort of a customer surveying function? Do you try and sort of learn as much as you possibly can?
Yeah.
What are the kind of insights that you glean from doing that kind of work in terms of understanding what resonates most with your customers in terms of your storytelling?
Yes. And I think when it comes to our story, it's very detailed. We don't just do one thing. And that's the trouble with Two Drifters stories, that it will take us an hour and a half to explain all the things we do.
Yeah, we haven't finished.
No.
Yeah, we haven't
Exactly.
To come back.
There's still loads.
No one's going to read an email that says that, and no one's going to watch an Instagram clip where it lists it all. And it's trying to find which one resonates. So people just use us as they're a carbon negative distillery. No one knows what that means.
No. And what
But
does that actually involve?
They trust that we are.
Yeah.
And it's finding that. So I don't know which part of it resonates with them. They just know that we are a genuinely credible, sustainable business.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah.
And you've got that definitive, because it's, you know, we obviously the Greenwash Charter, like one of the big things that we're contending with at the moment is this sort of, I guess this real conundrum that a lot of brands are going through regarding whether or not to shut up shop and green hush essentially and not communicate about their sustainability credentials for fear of greenwashing. And the question is always then posed, well, if I'm potentially going to get absolutely slammed for, you know, from a reputational perspective for getting this stuff wrong, and the benefit of sharing this with our customer base and actually them therefore engaging with us is not enough to outweigh the potential risk. Like what's, you know, obviously that doesn't account for you guys. Like what would be your advice and what would you say to business owners out there that are kind of questioning that?
That's really tricky, because if you only dip your toe, you're in for like a big wake-up call, because there are going to be vast areas. It depends how much you lean on it in a marketing way.
I would say pick your area.
Yeah.
Like we've picked carbon emissions. Someone else will plant, friends of us do tree planting, others do plastic free. We are carbon emissions. That's what we talk about. People know that's what we talk about. And I think obviously you can't fix everything, but just pick something and just go with it, research it, calculate it, find ways that you can reduce it or avoid it or do something else, and then you'll move on to something else, rather than thinking it's when I used to do wound care at nursing, it's like, how do you eat an elephant was one of the things we used when you had such a massive wound. It's how do you eat an elephant? You chop it up into little pieces. That's what you need to do with your business and your carbon footprint. Chop it up into little pieces and find your area that you're starting with. And then it's finding the bit that also you can talk about and that's interesting. A lot of people
You have to care as well.
Yeah.
You have to really care about what you're doing, and because you've got to be full in conviction, and then all the research becomes easy.
And crucially, you've got to make, coming back to the point about the billboard ads, is that you've got to make difficult decisions about what you do and don't do based upon we've, pinned ourselves to the pressed our flags to the mast of being this. We absolutely have to commit and have to make different decisions as a result.
Yes.
And it's start now. Like, don't wait. Just you can start now. Yeah.
So coming back to kind of storytelling and thinking about climate, like we're obviously, I think we're recording on the 13th of May here, 2025. We're obviously in a global context at the moment with all that's happening across the pond and the, if we want to call it, the ESG backlash as it's referred to. Like, what's your overarching view of the kind of sense of apathy that is potentially growing and developing towards sustainability? Like, how do we go about addressing that?
So I think one of the areas we address it is that if you don't need to care that we're a sustainable brand, our rums are better than everyone else's. So if you're sustainable as a marketing tool, then this isn't going to work. If you're incredibly sustainable because you genuinely are hoping your business not to hurt the planet, then it doesn't really matter if the world doesn't see you sustainable, as long as your product is amazing. And that's why we're rum first, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think that's crucial and links back to what the advice would be for other businesses. If you're worried about it affecting it, you don't. Why do you need to talk about it? You're only talking about sustainability because you want to sell more product, and therefore you use it as a tool to do that. That's risky if you aren't watertight on it. But on the flip side, if you really care about what you're trying to achieve, then it doesn't matter that you don't shout about it. It really doesn't matter.
We never thought we'd talk about our carbon negative footprint. We thought we'd talk about the fact that we're making rum in the UK from scratch.
Which is really weird.
Like, we thought that would be really interesting.
That's fascinating. So it wasn't...
No, it's a given.
No.
It's a given to us. And that's maybe the point, is that if you want to use it as a marketing tool, you're in for a rough ride, exactly like Gemma says.
Right.
It will not work because you're doing it for all the wrong motivations.
So out of interest, when did it become clear that with this really authentic grounding in, being a carbon negative business, when did it become apparent that actually this was something that you wanted to utilize as part of your story and wanted to be more front and center?
I don't think it has.
Oh, no, it's just, sustainability is definitely, a big part of it now.
Do you have two drifters?
Carbon negative?
Oh, well, that's not so we talk about it. That's so it's our guiding principle. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still not to talk about it. I don't know if I do. I just, it's not front and center. Like most of our customers, you're asking like if the surveys and stuff, and understanding that most of our customers couldn't care less.
No.
Right? They don't drink it because of that. They don't go into a bar. It's never listed kind of as that. The reason it's in the bar is because the bartender's interested or the buyer for the group is interested from their ESG perspectives. But it's very rarely the person that consumes the product that drinks it for that reason. Very, very small amount.
Are you guys, sorry, come back to but when you think about other products that you guys buy personally, are you bothered about the sustainability?
Yes.
You are. Okay.
Massively.
Why do you think that there's such, as you've alluded to there, even with Two Drifters customers, they're not that bothered about the fact that it's a carbon negative product. But why do you think that is the case? Why is there so much apathy essentially towards the sustainability credentials as the things that we buy?
For the same reason that there's that greenwashing is the thing, then they've changed the rules of the EU.
I think if they believe, I think that's it. I don't think they don't want it to be true. I think they worry it's not true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And just dismiss it.
Yeah.
Everyone's lying.
Way easier to do that.
But let's just move on and make a decision based upon some other credential regarding price, quality, whatever.
Exactly.
Even when we started back in 2019, so 6 years ago, we used to do a lot of like small shows in Devon, because that's how you start, like selling to the public and talking about it. And you put up carbon negative rum up there, and people would just be like, don't believe you.
No.
And you have to spend
They'd laugh at it.
they'd laugh at it, and you'd spend the first like 10 minutes talking to someone, trying to explain how you do it, right? Which is, I got better at doing it.
Got good, yeah.
But you're like, right, well, you got to do it.
Coming up with my spreadsheet.
Quite,
And
exactly.
you've then immediately got to gauge the level of the person's interest in it anyway, so that's trying all of that. But that part it just shows you that there wasn't an interest even 6 years ago. So that apathy has only grown, exactly as you're alluding to, because more people have just advertised green things that aren't even remotely interesting towards saving the planet. And it's just, so they've got bored of it.
What I do think it helps with is the purchase of the second bottle.
Yeah.
So our tours are sold out till Christmas, and people don't come because we're sustainable. They come because we're making rum in Devon, and that's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah.
They leave knowing the effort we go to with our rums, but also the effort we go to not hurt the planet. So the first bottle, I think, will always be rum. Is it interesting? Independent.
Yeah.
The second bottle is like, oh, well, I know they're doing a lot for not hurting the planet.
And now which one do I?
Why would I get a different rum?
Yeah.
So I think it helps that second purchase.
If essentially the first criteria of quality,
Yeah.
Price point, etc., realised, then yes, it absolutely is the defining factor. Does it also, in light of that, influence the gifting element? Because my imagination is that it's nice to be able to tell that additional story of
Correct.
not only is this great, but it's carbon negative as well.
Yes, and because on our website that comes through, you put a gift note, and we do gift boxes, so I get to write the gift notes of what people had, and a lot of them are like, oh my god, and they're really sustainable.
Yeah.
So it's like, amazing rum made in Devon, this is awesome, we went there, it was great. Independent rum in Devon, amazing. And then the next one's like, oh my gosh, and they do loads for the planet, or they're really green, or they're sustainable.
Which comes back to that whole experience that is alluded to in the white paper around the biological experience of being able to share that story. It's fascinating. Again, bigger, broader point or question here. You've mentioned that in the last 6 years, we've become more skeptical and more apathetic towards sustainability communication.
Yes.
What are the implications of that? Is it okay in your mind that we're all just shutting up shop and not really talking about it? Or is that a problem? And if it is a problem, how do we go about addressing it?
Oh, that's a big question.
I think when it comes to like businesses and sustainability claims and people believing them, who's the person that's going to say, that's true, that's not true, that's correct, yes, you can believe that, or they need to get better? Like B Corp was one of them, there's a few others, but I don't know what's going to make this sudden greenwashing go away and people believe or not believe.
It's also true across all news, right? It's that
Yeah.
all of it is now slightly unbelievable, and there's a question over journalism as in itself. And so everyone's got the same kind of dilemma that we have as a society right across the board as to what to believe. What is the truth? And I think that, yeah, those two are inherently linked. Yeah.
But then we're in a new bit where, because this climate change is relatively new for us, like, and it comes down to the brands, and we just have to be better at telling our stories. And maybe it's not someone else's responsibility to get you to believe that Two Drifters are credible. It's my job to get you to believe Two Drifters are credible, and I have to find better ways to tell the story.
It's fascinating that, and the thing that we've observed with our work with our signatories of the Anti-Greenwash Charter is that adopting, and you guys already do this, radical, proactive transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is the crux.
Yeah.
And the cornerstone of the brand positioning that allows you then
Yes.
to build that trust over time. Because as long as you are being uncomfortably and vulnerably transparent about, these are the areas where we are not sustainable as a business, these are the problems that we're facing with it, this is how we're going to address it, it actually liberates you as a brand to then be able to communicate about the things that you are doing well with confidence, and in a way that people will respond well to. So I totally agree that we need that to become the norm.
Yes.
Where we all collectively.
Yeah. And it's either through, it won't be through choice, it'll have to be through force, I guess, nudging and legislation.
Absolutely.
because you won't do that because it won't improve your profitability. So, yeah.
It's an interesting one. Well, look, I feel like I've got loads more questions that I want to ask you guys, and hopefully I've totally put you off on the experience and we can come back but let's finish now with some magic wands. This ever increasingly battered magic wand that we keep walking around with. I'll start with you, Jeb. If I was to hand you a magic wand, you've changed one thing about the commercial world this instant, what would that one thing be?
Mine would be to know that you can't be sustainable just with a slogan. So buy this, plant a tree. They don't negate each other out. Like, it's to know, and the general public has to know that for the climate to get better and the heating to go down and the warming to be less, it's going to take so much stuff for it to happen that you just need to be aware that slogans and one-liners aren't it.
Here. But here to progress. I mean, specifically, I couldn't agree with you more. I had a lady, just as a slight segue, I had a lady on the show a few weeks ago, and we were talking about, well, she was explaining to me that when it comes to carbon emissions and reduction in carbon emissions, there have been two events in the 21st century where we've seen a reduction in emissions. One was the 2008 financial crisis, and one was COVID. And the point that she made was that even in those experiences, which were, incredibly discombobulating for all of us, it was fractional.
Yeah.
The degree to which we saw a decline in emissions. So that gives you a sense of the scale of disruption to our status quo that's going to be required. And yes, so what you described perfectly, Jenna, that the need for us to get really serious about this.
Yeah.
And it's not just good enough to throw a slogan or a particular initiative at this stuff.
No, and everyone goes, what's a two drifters elevator pitch? And I'm like, in sales, an elevator pitch is 15 seconds that you have in a, and I go, I don't have one because it takes longer than that to tell you what we're doing. And it's that I get asked all the time. I'm like, no, I don't have one.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Give me your elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you an elevator pitch. That's a poor question to ask. Exactly. Go on, magic one.
No, mine is easy. A carbon tax. If there was a global carbon tax, bang, it's done. A lot of the problems start to fix themselves. Yeah.
What do you see? Let's imagine day one, there's a global carbon tax. What happens?
Immediately you put a price on carbon, so it have to be structured properly, obviously. That's a given.
I mean, this is a magic wand. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a magic.
It better be. So you would immediately see a price for carbon that basically puts technologies that are able to remove it from the atmosphere in a competitive space. It then becomes sensible to do it. So then the avoidance part becomes immediately built into everyone's bottom line. And like, how do we make this company, how does Nestle become profitable? I'll pick on them. By basically they have to strip out all this carbon from their processes, and immediately radical things will get priced in. And you'd be like, well, if I keep using the fossil fuels here, that's an enormous carbon price and we have to pay for it to be removed. If we avoid it, if we look at alternatives, they become obvious, and that filters through every decision. I
could buy a slightly more expensive British supplier or a much cheaper Chinese supplier, but oh my gosh, my carbon tax is so much higher if I get the Chinese one. So I'm going to buy the British one. Even though it's more expensive, it turns out my tax will be lower.
So yeah, I always believe the market will fix that.
Yeah.
And it would price out.
A significant jolt, but one that would be
massive,
an amazing thing to witness. Well, look, let's hope that we see these things happen in the future. Guys, thank you so much for, as I say, being so open and sharing the insights that you have with us about the storytelling, approach that you guys take. It's been brilliant. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.